Okay. Hello, everyone. Thank you for attending our artist talk this afternoon. My name is Christina, and I am Factory Media Center's Operations Coordinator. Before we begin, I would like to take the time to acknowledge that the land of present-day Hamilton is situated on the shared ancestral lands of the Haudenosaunee and Anishinaabeg, including the Mississaugas of the New Credit First Nation. This land is covered by the Dish with One Spoon Wampum Belt Covenant, which was an agreement between the Haudenosaunee and Anishinaabeg to share, care, and preserve the resources around the Great Lakes for years to come. As a not-for-profit artist-run center, the Factory is committed to active, ongoing reconciliation in collaboration with Indigenous peoples in our community. If you are interested in getting involved in this type of work as well, I invite you to please check out what's currently going on at 1492 Landback Lane, about 20 minutes away from Hamilton. The land defenders there are currently defending treaty land from developers and collecting donations to help towards bail funds and occasionally ask for donations of supplies. After the introduction, we will paste a donation link in the chat if you would like to learn more and support as well. If you haven't heard of Factory Media Center before, we are a media arts resource in Hamilton, Ontario. We host screenings, exhibitions, and provide multimedia equipment, studio space, and skill development workshops for local artists and independent filmmakers, or anyone interested in digital media. This artist talk today is made possible through the support of our funders for making our programs possible. Thank you to the City of Hamilton, Ontario Arts Council, and Canada Council for the Arts. This program is also only possible through the generous work of our volunteers and committees. And just before we begin, I want to thank programming committee members Michael DeRizio and Catherine Dietmert for helping us put together this incredible workshop. Jessica Rodriguez, who is the live stream technician and a speaker today, and past Factory staff T. Kundu and John Hill. This program is presented in partnership with the Workers' Arts and Heritage Center, and I'm going to pass it along to Kat to introduce it for us today.
Thanks, Christina. We're so happy to be here. Hi, I'm Kat Williams, and I am the Outreach and Development Specialist for the Workers' Arts and Heritage Center. We are also affectionately known as WAC. We exist just around the corner in the historic Custom House, and we're neighbors to Factory Media Center. So we're just on Stewart Street in Hamilton, right off of James Street North. And WAC has been around for 25 years and is a labor arts space and community museum. And we have so many interesting things that we do, and we are interested in celebrating and sharing the stories of workers, workers' culture, and workers' history. And we have exhibitions, we have digital projects, we have a permanent collection of labor history objects. We just have our fingers in a lot of different pies, and it's just such a special opportunity to have a great network of other arts organizations here in Hamilton. And so we're very grateful to be celebrating International Workers' Day today with this artist talk and with screening Jorge's films and partnering with the Factory Media Center. WAC would also like to acknowledge the Ontario Arts Council, the City of Hamilton, the Province of Ontario, QP, the Provincial Building and Construction Trades Council of Ontario, and the Canada Council for the Arts as our 2021 supporters. And we really, really appreciate their support and are grateful for their support. I am going to turn it back over to Christina, and we hope you enjoyed this artist talk.
Thanks, Kat. Okay, so welcome again. This May Day Artist Talk features Jorge Lozano, the Governor General Award recipient in 2020, and it's also based on our screening collection taking place on Factory Media Center's website, as well as in our front window from 6 to 10 p.m. each evening until Monday. Before we head into the talk, I would like to introduce the speakers as well. Jessica A. Rodriguez is a multimedia artist, designer, and researcher. She's currently completing a doctorate program in communications, new media, and cultural studies at McMaster University. Her practice and research projects focus on audiovisual practices such as visual music, electronic literature, video experimentation, sound art, visualization/sonification, live coding, amongst others, and collaborating with composers, writers, designers, and other visual artists. John Isaiah Edward Hill is an Oneida artist and poet from Hamilton, Ontario. He holds a bachelor's degree in Indigenous Studies and English and Cultural Studies from McMaster University. His favorite mediums are sound, film, collage, and the zine. His work deals with themes related to his Haudenosaunee heritage, queer identity, and working class roots. John uses he and they pronouns. And our speakers today would like to introduce Jorge a little bit more. So I'm going to pass it off to them, and I will join you again at the end. Thank you very much.
All right. Yeah. Thank you very much to Christina and to Kat for introducing us and for that lovely introduction. Again, thank you to WAC and Factory Media Center for bringing us all together. And I'm John and this is Jessica. And so Jorge Lozano is joining us. Where are you joining us from, Jorge?
Toronto,
Ontario, Canada.
My house, Toronto.
Beautiful. Jorge was born in 1950. Is that correct?
I guess so.
But has been living in Toronto since the early 1970s. Was that 70 or 71? Jorge? 71. Yeah. So right. almost 50 years exactly.
Yeah.
Jorge, obviously you have won the last year you received the Governor General's Award for Media Arts. And was that with the distinction of lifetime achievement as well?
I guess, yeah. That's what they say, right? When they give you that prize.
Yeah, I thought that was very curious because when is the lightest an artist's life of achievement over? You know, is it over at 50 years plus of working?
Yeah, it's kind of strange because I just feel that I'm just beginning to do things the way that I want to do them.
Exactly.
So and then maybe in 10 years I will feel the same way, that I'm just beginning to do things as I really wanted them to do them. So there's always a beginning. We're always beginning, kind of. I feel like in the arts, well, at least in my own experiences, and I'm always, every tape is a new beginning, or every tape is an entrance to an exit, a more complex exit that brings you to a more complex entrance, kind of a thing. So it's an ongoing thing. It's an ongoing thing.
Exactly, branching paths, like twigs off branches off trunks of trees.
Yeah, especially like I don't think that art to me is a profession. It's more a form of living, a form of existence, a mode of existence. So the art is my life, but every day, every second, it's I that's what I am. So I don't differentiate one or the other.
Yeah, that's incredible.
Yeah. And how do you think your practice has changed in 50 years that you've been here in Canada, right? So
yeah,
how it's like?
Well, it goes along with my when you get into another country, like in my case that I came here to Canada, and I came in 1971 when there wasn't that many immigrants. So there were, but there wasn't that many. Not like now. I was in some ways isolated, and I didn't speak English as well. So I had to, in some ways, became sort of like a little kid, a baby, learning how to talk, right? And at the same time, as I learned how to talk, I began discovering kind of discrimination in the way that people at the time, the concept that they have of Latin Americans, and it still is a very reduced a stereotype that is an enclosure of 2 or 3 or 4 words, right? Mostly even associated with Mexican, you know, with Mexican stereotypical description. So we were also like Mexican, there are stereotypes of Mexicans, right? When we came here. So the struggle right from the beginning was to create a sense of autonomy, a way to tell the new culture, I am this way, I think in this way, I move in this way, I dance in this way, I am in this way. I am different than you are, but you know, I don't want to assimilate. Don't force me to assimilate. So art became my tool to have my own voice. I never wanted or thought to be an artist, but then I discovered when I came in here, I bought a Super 8 camera and used a Portapack video. In doing that, I began creating my own images, and sometimes seeing myself on the films or on the videos, which I will never see people like me when I will turn the TV on. So I was a foreigner, right? So I had to create my own, right from the beginning, was to, as I was living my life, I had to create images that would express and would put me in the picture, you know, and say, I am this way, basically. And so that's been the struggle. And I still do the same thing. It's almost like saying, I exist constantly.
For sure. And so, you know, exploring video, you know, that's sort of like what you're known as a video artist, as a filmmaker. What is it about video that attracted you to the medium? When were your first encounters with video? Did you have a favorite television show growing up, favorite movies? How did video enter your life?
Because I met this person that had a video Portapack. In 1971, when I came to Toronto, I came to the island, Toronto Island. And Toronto Island was all like the last of the hippies at the time. So there were a lot of young people, and there was a lot of so like young artists living there, and photographers, and, you know, lots of, you know, hippie kind of, so like collective dance, rock and roll, drugs, so everything, you know, that was distinguished, that's part of the history. So I discovered the Portapack, and the Portapack was, I don't know if you guys know the Portapack, but it was a camera that was attached to a backpack when it had the recorder, and it was very heavy because the batteries were in there, and the camera was like that attached, so you would record like this. Okay, what makes it interesting is that the Portapack, you could see yourself in real time, what we was called real time. So you could record and play back immediately, or you could attach the deck to a monitor and see yourself recording, or looking through the viewfinder. So it was an immediate perception. So a lot of the works that were made because of the Portapack were observations of the self. There was a lot of artists who began looking at themselves, in looking at their bodies, and looking at the histories in their bodies, and so there was a lot of naked people, you know, looking at all these cards and things, you know, and talking about the history of all that. So it was because you could see yourself. I mean, one of the takes that I remember the most is this guy has a monitor in front, right? The camera is in here in the back, and he's cutting his hair because he was a long hair, so like a hippie, but he began cutting his hair. So you could actually, you know, he used it to do that action. You cannot do that in the mirror, right? You need to have a mirror. It would be too hard. But in with the video product, you could do that in real time. You could see the same thing at the same time. So even political activists use the Portapack because you could record and pass the tapes quickly, and people would play them back and see what was happening, right? Because before that it was film. In film, you had to wait a long time before you could see what was happening. So that was a very revolutionary way of seeing the world, right? to be able to see it as, now it's very common, right? Now we see everything immediately, but at that time, it changed the direction of the arts. And to me, it was very empowering because it gave me sort of like self-esteem in some ways, you know, because I did a lot of actions in front of the camera, and I began building myself around being able to talk and see myself at the same time and seeing what I was talking. And that was really empowering because it was me in the picture, right?
So
So
yeah,
then I began evolving, you know.
thank you. So yeah, so you mentioned that you came here obviously as an immigrant from Colombia, but then you face a lot of misconceptions about being from Latin America. So I don't know. I just want to ask you, what, like, in like these years, what were the benefits, the challenges, and also the misconceptions of identifying yourself as a Latin American, not just in your work but also in the academy, because I know that you also study here in Canada. So
Yeah.
if you can talk a little bit more about that.
It's just that when you talk about identity, when you start sort of like, you know, that's identity, belonging, kind of, I mean, that in some ways is imposed to you, you know, because when I came in here, I never thought of being Latin American. I never even thought of being Colombian. You know, I was point out and said, you are this and you are this and you are that. So there was a whole reflection on who I was when I came in here, you know, because I was being perceived as something that I had not imagined that I was. So I was just me, you know. I grew up in a very poor neighborhood in Colombia, so I was used to be with people from all different cultural backgrounds, Afro-Colombians, indigenous, the mixture of all those, you know, in very creative neighborhoods because of the diversity, different smells in food. People will build their own houses when you're in those neighborhoods. They build their own, so different styles. So it was a very actually rich cultural environment that I think that is I carry that with me, that sense of diversity and multiplicity of differences. And I think that I carry it in the way that I work too. I never stick to one style. You know, I have received information, you know, but when I came in here, I wasn't identified as one single thing, right? And that was complicated. Because you don't feel you are the link of your own self, you know. And then when you realize that, you start relinking that self again and trying to be autonomous and as I said before, to say I exist and I am this way, and I am what I am, right? And it's a process, and in that process of doing that, you begin learning from the other culture, and you begin learning to reject the parts of the other culture that you don't want and that you are against. And then you become not in two cultures, but you become one person. And this is the experience of most immigrants. You become a person that is within cultures. You know, you're within cultures. You at some point become a unique person made out of what you used to be and what you are becoming. I'm not a Colombian and I'm not a Canadian, right? I am a mixture, a hybrid of all that experience of being here and being in Colombia, and I go back and forth, you know. And in both cultures, I do reject assimilation or nationalisms. So you know, so it is an ongoing process of becoming. You're always becoming, because every day that I wake up, if I go out and I meet someone, when we were able to talk to people more, they would say, "Where are you from?" And I have been here more than 40 years, right? And people will always ask you, where are you from? So you're always put in that place. But the Canada that I imagine, the Canada that is my Canada, is full of diversity and the incredible work of immigrants in literature, in the arts, you know, and it's a kind of work that comprehends multiple cultures. For instance, my Canada is polylingual, you know. It's not English only. and I am bilingual, and I understand another languages, and I distinguish another languages. So that Canada that I understand is a Canada that is polycultural and polyracial and it's just difference, right? And it's not the official Canada, but it's a very strong and important Canada, like the indigenous Canada, all those Canadas form a Canada that is not the official Canada. And most of the work that happens in those areas is quite interesting because it's a work that has the link itself from the traditional way of doing things, from the, like my experimental work, although absorbs and knows the history of experimental filmmaking and video making, is different because I have another concern in experimentality. And I can use some techniques, but I transform them into my own language, into my own knowledge, my own form of knowing and doing.
Yeah, that's very compelling stuff. And I think that there's this idea, this thread that comes through in a lot of your work, especially Lenin's Kiss, which we are screening on the website as part of this exhibition. I love Lenin's Kiss. It's so beautiful to me. And there's this idea of self-emancipation, this idea of like emancipating yourself. And you're talking about sort of like as an immigrant living within cultures and almost like not being marginalized, almost like sort of being marginalized by choice, in the sense that you reject there are certain aspects of Colombian identity and Canadian identity as official state entities and normalized identities that you reject. How does art sort of factor into your self-emancipation? Is it an everyday thing where you wake up and you say, I'm going to make art from my perspective and that's going to be my individual vision? Or is there something a little bit more specific and a little bit more nuanced than that?
It is. The way that I work is, I mean, and I said it before, art for me is a mode of existence. So I don't, in my style of work, it's always been like that. It's very spontaneous. I do have equipment, and I always did. Whenever when I came to Canada, I bought a Super 8 camera, with the first it cost $500 or $300. I seen a Canon 614 or something like that, and I was really happy to have that. And I made immediately 3 films because I always wanted to make a film. And then slowly I always have had my equipment to do. So I carry my equipment with me and I record things all the time. And so I have archives of lots and lots of stuff. And what I record is stuff that impacts me. I had the camera, but I don't record everything. So things that impact me, and they exist in my camera because they impact me. But I don't have any ideas of what I'm going to do with it. I just know that something is going to happen eventually. Eventually, I go home and I start, because I'm always working, I'm always making sound, or it's a discipline that I have. I work 24 hours a day in my work, basically, and so then I began putting things together, and the images in the information in the images, because I do work segmented things, I don't really think that linearly. Then I start putting things together, and then the images, they talk to each other, sometimes escape my own control and comprehension, right? And sometimes images talk to each other, sometimes they repel, right? And images are representations of the reality that is not. Images is a representation of reality, but it's not the reality, right? So somehow images and the reality, they conspire to create something different, another world, right? That it could, because that the representation of an image is not just that image, it's more, especially also my subjectivity is part of that. So how I record it, so that reality exists different from another point of view. So then I begin learning too from the images about, as I began putting the pieces together. And then I begin a process of reflection of what I am trying to do. And most of the time, it escapes my total comprehension. And I like that because a viewer can also make their own stories. You know, I'm not against, I'm against total truths and final things. You know, they're all unfinished. They could continue if you know, in some ways they may have a life of their own too as well. You know, because I am not so, I cannot control them. It's impossible, you know, because of the way that I work. So that is with Lenin skills. I had those candles for years and years and years in a box, and they were so like melting and move, you know, changing a bit. And I always wanted to do, since the beginning, I wanted to do something with them, and that's what I saved them, because I didn't want to burn them. I just wanted to create something that I knew, but I didn't know what it was in there. Only that now in this pandemic, things in the house had become somethings. You know, they all these things had acquired another life, and they have opened their boxes by themselves and say, hey, do something with me, you know, and I'm very glad to do it, because we had to be creative in the house, or we're gonna go nuts, right? And even if you're creative, we're going nuts anyway, you know. But that was a response to that, you know, like that, a moment where I've been doing interventions in the house a lot. By myself with my partner Alexandra, who does also video and film, and she does different work that I do, but we collaborate sometimes. So that this Lenin kiss came, and I had two, and the kiss is totally accidental, although, you know, and that's why it's Lenin's kiss, because I decided to burn only one, because I wanted to keep one, right? So so it's kind of an accidental scene, and I filmed it in Super 8 and in video, and it's in both, it's in those sense. And the video took so long, hours and hours, because I saw that those candles were going to burn very fast, but there's really good wax from the communist times, you know. It doesn't burn so easy. So and I got those candles in Budapest many years ago. So my work happens at that level, you know, in some ways, and not unprepared, but it's very much has to do with the unknown, you know, with the unexpected. And I do cultivate the unexpected, in that on purpose I try to make my things, the stuff that I collect, the images that I film and have ready to work with it, to leave that element of the unexpected and see where do I go? Where do I end up? I also follow, right? Follow different views too in the work. I'm trying to make it multifaceted, you know, which has to do a lot with my own reflections, my own epistemological, ontological. There's a kind of a disobedience, you know. There's a disobedience on not being what you have been told that you gotta be, right? And yeah, the epistemological disobedience is basically what in the use of different disciplines, you know. It's a kind of a multidisciplinary, but more than multidisciplinary is indisciplinary use of things, you know. And that, to me, I am in a constant state of what you were saying, emancipation, because emancipation is an everyday thing. You have to every day look at the world and see if what you thought a minute ago makes sense or not, because the world is changing, you know. And I know I'm being a little bit so like radical in this, but the world is changing, and we have to change with the world as well, right? Every day there's something new to learn, basically, you know. And every day is we need to when it comes to this self-emancipation is that comes from also the idea of Frank Fanon, you know, that he said in order to decoloniality or anti-coloniality or anti-colonial to decolonize oneself is self-creation. And for self-creation is the capacity to see yourself as a colonized person and struggle every day into conversing, linking that colonized self with the real self, that is with your real self, right? And autonomous, independent self. And that is what I do, basically. I live that. I'm not political, but I live my life politically in that sense, that I am very aware that I cannot handle truths, you know what I mean? My truths are very, they can crumble very easy. And I let them crumble because truth is also changing. Right? So that's, I don't know if I can explain that. I mean, yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, I think it's a very interesting idea about that. People may think that video, mostly when you like approach documentary, you're showing the truth, right? But what's the truth? That there are many truths, and the truth, as you're saying, like the truth is always changing, as the images are always changing, as ourselves are always changing. And just like I like this concept of the migrant image. An image that is always transforming and that is always moving. And that's an interesting point.
Well, it's kind of so like coding, sound coding that you do, right? So you do, so I mean, you're creating at this as you're living, right? And you're coding and creating sounds. Obviously, there's some controls that you have, but it's something like that, this. We are writing our own code as we live, right? We are creating our own rhythms, our own perceptions as we are living, writing, which is what we gotta do, write our own code, not just to use somebody else's code.
So do you think your video work escapes yourself?
In some ways, so some of the times I don't understand things that I've done, but I mean, it's not a lack of control, and the word control is kind of strange. It's almost like it's more shaping things, more than controlling. I shape things, and I allow for certain segments to relate in their own way, and sometimes I even look for that, for things that they perhaps don't make sense if I put them together, but they played each other somehow, and then I through years and years and years I can detect that. I can detect when scenes can create their own meaning. So, or sometimes I do shape them in the way that I want them to but in parts, not in the whole work. I like my works to be kind of incomplete, in some ways. They can go from A to Z, but incomplete. And as I said, they could continue,
Mm-hmm.
I just stopped them because I stopped in there, but they continue, because they're also dealing with issues that are important, I think, about thinking about the world, thinking about politics in a different way. It's something to do with the aesthetic of politics, or the politics of aesthetics, that kind of stuff, that kind of relationship.
There's something paradoxical about feeling that a work isn't complete until there's enough of it to exist on its own, but also enough of not so much of it that it overwhelms the viewer with objective truth and objective meaning. And I think that's a big part of my process when I create my own works, is that I put as much of myself as I can afford in them, but also I want people to be able to fit themselves into it as well, because the more people can empathize with my work, the better that my work will be the best thing that my work can do is make a new world imaginable. And so even if I'm taking, even if I'm writing a poem about like a park that I go to every day, as long as I make somebody else view a park near where they live a different way, then in some ways I'm doing something correct, in the sense that I'm creating through a slight kind of destruction or obfuscation. Yes. What I think about, and I think like living under a settler state like Canada, decolonialization is about imagining a new world. And there's this tension in decolonial and anti-colonial and post-colonial studies with the past as it existed pre-contact, as it existed before colonization, and this sort of mythic idea of like returning to the old ways. And I thought what was very interesting about this idea of self-emancipation through decolonization is that you reject the present and the past. But can decolonization exist without some form of the past, whether it be some sort of imaginary before contact, or is decolonization about moving forward in a new way by taking as much as taking only with us into the future the things that we see as helpful, valuable, productive, that kind of thing?
No, I think that the past is the past, and what is the past is an accumulation of knowledge, right? So there is information in there that is really important, and especially that kind of knowledge that is non-destructive knowledge. And that's why, for instance, indigenous past is really important, it's very relevant. And besides that, a lot of indigenous cosmologists, they haven't really changed. They're not past, they're present.
Yeah.
Right. There's nothing of the past to take care of nature, right? That should be the present. So in some ways, this actualization of the past is really important. It's not that we're going to go back. It's just that we're going to bring that past into the present, because the change is in the present.
Mm-hmm.
And the future is that present that we have changed. That's what the future is. The future is the changing that present. In our relationship with the past is very important. Without the past, we wouldn't be able to see that the present that we have is not so right, because there's another ways of beings and organizations that have happened before that are very quite interesting, that they still make sense. And as I said before, some people still practice them.
For sure. And I think about praxis, and I think about living your life in a revolutionary and emancipatory way, and not just for yourself, but for the communities who are around you, because we want the future to be a place where everybody can exist.
Yeah. And
I think that that's really important. And yeah, I guess you mentioned the idea of like the past as present and as future. And I think about this idea of the teaching of the 7 generations, and this idea in like my people's teachings that everything that we do in the present is for the benefit of generations 7 times in the future. And so, when people defend the land, when they defend water, when they protest pipelines, when they do all these things, they advocate for themselves in the present, sure, but they also advocate for the future generations that are coming, because we know that this land, even though this land is, like there's this conception in neoliberalism that the land can always be exploited without consequence. But we don't have that understanding. We have the understanding that the land can only give to us what we give to it. And so this reciprocal relationship, this protector identity, this stewardship that we have towards the land is not just for our benefit in the present, but it's for the benefit of future generations.
Yeah, no, you said it, and there's not very much left for the future generations, right? Because we have not living a really good picture for them. But the thing is that when you will talk about that capacity to foresee 7 generations, and even probably more, is another form of knowledge. It's a more cosmological, more planetarian knowledge, right? For people who lived in a small territories, they could travel to, right? Through observation and through looking at the sky when there was no bright lights, you could see trajectories, you can learn, you can calculate, you can do a lot of stuff. I mean, building scenes, and so there's a lot of, it's a different form of knowledge, and we lost that. Especially, with capitalism, for the 14th century, the formation of capitalist state and all that stuff. But it is a addiction to profit, right? That we cannot imagine further than anything. I mean, we have difficult to imagine it past the day. We are conditioned to imagine life the rent day. It's all build day. That kind of stuff. We are just paying. Working to pay. You cannot have an imagine. That kind of lifestyle doesn't give you any room to imagine. To have that capacity to go 7 generations ahead, and that would be really good to recuperate. I think that in some ways, probably art tries to get that, to reimagine, like, because art in some ways is seen differently what we all see, right? That in some ways art does that. So it has that visionary kind of a thing, it doesn't get that far, but yeah, it's just a capacity to go beyond the moment and thinking different, but that is cultures that, as I say, cosmic. We live a very different time right now, but another cultures were more cosmic, in terms of the time. They didn't have a watch to begin with, right? They would work with sunlight and moonlight, and and it was all a continuous way of understanding the world, right? They live it within the whole world. And science, they were science. Science is the belief of the powers of nature, right? That later on is converted into religion, that it become a dogma, right? But initially, that kind of what we call religious knowledge is science, right? It's observation of the force of nature and how they behave, and then you will name them, give them different attributes and powerful. I don't. They call them divine, but So yeah.
Yeah, I think that ties into like what I see as like the everyday role of the artist is just to be able to take the mundane and transform it into something a little bit more impactful, a little bit more meaningful, and to cultivate the idea of like to exercise the imagination like a muscle is, I think, like the artist's like main skill. What do you see as like the everyday role of the artist? And like and as art, because you say you don't make political art, but that you make art politically and you live politically, but like how does art manifest itself for you when you're making breakfast or when you're waking up and when you're reading?
It's all connected because I do think that in some ways the for instance, I am editing in what I edit, right? And working, doing, and then I come to I cook a lot, right? And then I need a break, and then I immediately go to the kitchen and I start cooking. And that cooking is not with the same concerns, and it's a movement from one world of images to a world of another world of mixing and creating something. And I don't usually cook the same thing, and I cook really well. That's what people say, but I never cook the same thing twice the same. Very similar, but never the same. So that process of cooking to me is very similar to the creative process that I have up there. And then when I go back editing, I have resolved a lot of the problems that I had in the edit room because of the creative process of cooking. And when I'm editing, I get hungry and inspired to go cooking because so they reinforce each other. The same thing when I go to sleep. I go to sleep and sometimes I wake up with the solutions of the editing or with something related to food. The same thing when I take a shower. I live a sensorial life, right? And that sensorial life is all connected as part of a creative process that I call existence, or that is my existence, And it all that is connected to the work. In my work, there is relations to cooking, to that contemplate, to doing nothing, to contemplate the world, right? Which is really important. It's all, that's part of my life. That's part of my life, and so that is all part of my work. And my work is not, the art is not necessarily the videos or the films that I do, but it's my relationship to the world outside too. That nature is artistic, right? If anything is real artist, is life, nature, that has created all these bloody differences and incredible, beautiful things, right? So it's almost to catch up, you know, because nature is constantly creating diversity and variability, and through beautiful connections between the bee and the flower and new insects and this and that, you know, and whatever the complexity of that is a very beautiful. I mean, the feathers of the birds, I mean, it's all aesthetics, you know what I mean? It's that we can appreciate through the senses. It's a life of the senses, you know, and that's how we know reality too, right? So art has to be very much through the senses, and the senses is everything. We are sensorial. We move through the world in that way, right? So therefore, everything becomes part of the work that what we're calling art, right? Which is the one that the things that I'm showing with you guys. But that is the result of the other stuff that I'm talking about, right? So the issues and the works are always different because of that movement through, you know, drifting through life, you know, and trying to understand life without letting the system depress you and become that it's impossible to change anything, you know, that revolt is impossible, you know, that emancipation is impossible. You know, it's sort of like keeping yourself alive means what I was talking, that Franz Fanon talks about self-creation is the act of, I hate to use the word reinventing yourself each day, or the word reinventing, right? But it's that creating yourself, because we had been absorbed by social political forces that had constructed us in many ways, and that have educated us to believe this and to believe that, and then every day is a challenge to say, hey, what's going on in here? You know, how much the system is controlling me, you know, my beliefs and the way that I relate to others and to the world. So it's a real challenge, and it's not, there is no answer to it. There's no answer, and that's when freedom, you had to invent it every day.
Yeah, I think that it's a very good point, just to say that everything is entangled. It's not that we are artists, but like by 8 a.m. to 8 p.m. we are artists, and then we are something else. But we are always like thinking about like about art. It's kind of like connected to everything. And I do want to come back to this, what John I rescue that you say in another video. I don't do political work, I do it politically. And it reminded me when I was in art school, like a professor was kind of like questioning us if we wanted to do political art. And I was kind of like hesitant about like that kind of like approach. But then I've been reading a lot. For example, I don't know if you know this person, Gabriel Gatti. He's from Uruguay, and he has this concept of narrativas del sentido. And basically, he's talking about the enforced disappearance in Latin America.
Yeah.
And about these, like all these political problems and the deaths and the disappearance of people. Then you have to create spaces to breathe, to talk about it. And he kind of like mentioned like art it can be an space. Maybe art cannot change the whole world, but art can be an excuse to talk about things. And I think your work is kind of like fits perfectly in this, because right now we're talking about a lot of things. It was just like an excuse to talk about immigration. It was an excuse to talk about politics.
Mm-hmm.
It was an excuse to talk about nature. So I think that's a very good point to rescue. And as you were saying, even like, I'm just kind of like also connected with my own ideas, but yeah, we as artists are political, not because we do political art, just because we are arranging images to visibilize things or to invisibilize things that are kind of like in the system. So so I think that's something very like important for your work. So I do wanted to ask you, like, like what are the tensions in your videos between the visible and the invisibilized that you want to also visualize or portray in your videos? I don't know if I made myself understood it.
No, that's fine. But before answering you that, I just want to go back to the political, because when I say that I don't do political art, and I live politically, when I say I don't do political art, in that way, in that small sentence, political means to me the politics that it police, the politics that police, because that's what we understand for politics. Politics is all the rules that governs the rules and the logic that governs the daily existence, right? And those are dictated by all those stupid politicians that we have, that belong to political parties, and they try to just, they're more concerned with the parties that with freedom or with the community, right? So that's politics. That's the traditional form of politics. But there's another understanding of politics that has to do with emancipation, and it's that is when I refer to I live politically, right? That kind of politics is the politics that questions, that questions even including my own self, right? My own logics and rules that I create for myself, and those logics and rules I create for myself, I try to break them down when I do art, and that's when I break all the rules of those logics. So I try to do it in every word, try to bring the rules and logics of my own rule that reflect the big politics, right? So there's two kinds of politics. The real politics is the politics that are concerned with community and the well-being of the community, and the changings and the constant changing of organization, right? But the other politics is the ones that want to create the status quo, which is the ones that we live, right? So, and then now I forgot your question.
I'm also forget.
Okay.
I was just talking about how, the tension between what is visibilized in your work and that it's invisibilized in the system.
The roots of my work, before the discourse of the visible and the invisible became known, or part of the artistic discourse, the roots of me making work was to make myself visible in a world that was defining me with 2 or 3 or 4 words. And that's when I came here to Canada. And that is, I have always experienced that. One of the problems with discrimination is that people looks at you, but they don't see you, right? And the struggle, my struggle at the beginning is even with my close communities, the people I was living with on the island, is how to make myself visible and beyond all those definitions that they had of me. Then later on, as I start becoming part of the art community, then as an individual, because the struggle is individual and collective at the same way. So when you start getting your community and you start organizing events, then you start creating a community, and then there's a struggle. And then as a community, Latin American artist community, the reason that we created events like festivals and all that stuff is precisely to tell the ruling art community, we are here, we think in this way, we're visible, we make ourselves visible. And why do we make ourselves visible? Because in the most of the independent video festivals in the 80s and the 70s, 80s, 90s, you didn't see Latin's works. So we had to bring them in here and create our own festivals to be ourselves visible. So the issue of visibility is really important, because discrimination and racism is basically invisibilizing the other one or reducing the other one to 1 or 2 things that will rob you of whatever humanity you have, or whatever great attributes you have, right? So discrimination not only happen, the struggle that we have is within the artist community, very strong as well, but, you know, very for years and years fighting against that. And then, for instance, I work with I made a video that is called Samuel and Samantha, you know, Salvadorian. It's about this guy talking while he's getting dressed up by his brother, and the whole tape is exactly a denunciation of the discrimination that the gay drag queen was called at the time, drag queen community, Latin community was having within the other communities, mostly within the white community in the ghetto, right? So the concerns of disabilities happens within every group, you know. There's, for some reasons, at all levels, at work, in the arts, with your friends, with your family, even sometimes with lovers, right? That when there's all these different cultural things, that perception can happen, and you only discover that when you end up your relationship with your lover, and then they point out the stereotypes, right? You know, so that it's a very complex, and that's what I say. It's a continuous self-creation thing. You know, it is. You have to make yourself make, and it's, you know, because, and it's really exhausting sometimes. You know, sometimes you get really exhausted, and I mean, we go to parties here, and that's one of the commentaries that we have. We go to the art community parties where there's 3 or 4 Latins are in here, and all those people that we knew in so and so gallery, right? They will ignore us, right? And we are there, and they don't see us, you know. And so and we had learned to actually make ourselves visible, you know. And so what has been happening is that people have been, we go to these places and more people come, right? And that is important to us, you know. More people come to hang around with us and break down those nuclear things that, you know, discrimination have. We're organizing here an event that is called Conversalon, and so far we have organized about 33, and it happens in this house, as you can see it. And the video projector is up there. There's a big one in here. So we invite. There's been artist talks. There has been in here a performance. Screenings of the 16 Super 8, music concerts, everything happens in here, and it's we invite 30, 40, 50, 60 people in here, and I cook a dinner for all of them. People are only invited to bring wine or whatever they want to drink, and we have so far, since we got counting 33, and the second last one that we have, it was 2 artists from Korea that came specifically for Conversalon, because they have heard about Conversalon, because we had another Korean artist. So we have an international, a gathering of international artists coming in here into the house, as well as local artists, and local artists from the immigrant local artists, as well as the white artists that we respect, you know, because we are not against anybody. We are just creating options, and options that will allow all of us to communicate regardless of whatever you do. So we do support all the cultural spaces in Toronto, in Hamilton, but we are always demanding somehow that variability, if that could be the word, you know.
And for example, now that you're like telling us this experience about Conversalon and these kind of like more like alternative experiences, how are these affected with COVID restrictions? How are
we stopped Conversalon. We are not doing it anymore. We are not doing it anymore. And people keeps telling us, you know, oh, I miss Conversalon. It's really too bad, or, you know, and that's one of the pain. You know, we have been trying to reinvent it in online, but we haven't done it yet. But there is ideas. Alexandra has ideas about it. And we think that it may work. At some points we got some of the artists invited us to do a Zoom, so like cooking conversation. Or while we were cooking, we were talking about the food and like this conversation that we were having, but we were cooking, right? And somebody on the other side was also cooking while we were cooking, because that's what the whole, so there were all this relationship about cooking and talking about food and politics and the same thing that we are talking about art and all that stuff. But so that's a possibility, but we haven't done it anymore. So that's unfortunate, that we cannot meet as groups as easy as it used to be, because that was one of the most beautiful things actually that we had, is that part of being able to be with lots of friends and not be afraid that you're gonna be sick.
Yeah, I think that kind of brings up like the kind of tragedy of Lenin's Kiss, is that it's this work of art that you created under pandemic conditions, but it's about proximity, it's about kissing, it's about intimacy, and this idea that one person may fall while another person is left behind. It's a very tragic piece. But
well, I'm sorry to interrupt you, but you see, I like your reading, and to me, I say, wow, great. I didn't know that, but it's true, So that's what I'm saying about that capacity of the works to for you to make your own narrative. And to me, it's great to hear that, because not because I made it, but because the work has that.
Yeah, I think that there's so many things that are built into it. The idea that it's a queer work, because there are these two people who are like of the same sex, of the same gender, who are facing off at each other, and then there's this idea of like this, like the change that has to happen in one before the kiss can happen, and it's almost like this tension. But when I think about art creation and like the idea of like the salon happening and then not happening because of COVID, how is that how COVID has not stopped you as an individual from making work, because you are still uploading new things so regularly on your Vimeo, just blessing us with so much new work. Do you think that there's has your work as an individual sort of has the affect around making art changed under COVID conditions, knowing that your collaborators will be very limited to the people who are personally like in your space, in your bubble, so to speak?
Yeah. No, it's have changed. I mean, right now I am in a halt. I'm working in a film. Actually, a friend of mine is making a feature film. Lina Rodriguez, a Colombian filmmaker. So she's making a feature film, and I'm doing the production designing, so like art direction and all that stuff. So I start on Monday full time, but we've been doing prep. So I've been busy, but I stopped. But I did a lot of works. I did lots. They were just coming out, and it was great because I found a way to visit all these ideas that I have that were already there, that I knew that they themselves, I didn't have to do very much, just to put them together in a way. That's all. So I did that, but it's had changed now because I don't so much that I need to recycle, but also because we're living in another world, and another world demands another way of thinking, and another way of thinking demands another way of living and experiencing and perceiving. So therefore, it demands for me another way of doing art, or another kind of art. I just finished, the last one that I finished is a long film that is called Train Makes Movies, and it's a trip of two people in a train from Toronto to Montreal, and it all happens there in front of the windows. But I am really going through that. I cannot give you an answer about what is going to happen, the outcome of this, but I am going through a serious rethinking of art, the functions of art, and the work that I do, and even how I think, how I think. What is it, the world that I had before somehow is disappearing. So to fool myself that I'm living in that world I mean, I'm fooling myself if I believe that I'm living in that world. It's gone. There's something different that looks very similar to what we are right now, but it's not. So if anything, we carry uncertainty like a shadow, right? We have become this shadow that we carry, that is uncertainty, and that is I think that we're going through like a major evolutionary breakthrough right now, you know, a change of everything, and the online thing is in here to stay. That was already happening, but the virus just pushed right faster on us, and that adjustment is very difficult because you are living in another world, right? Perhaps younger people are more adapted to make it more productive, right? But yeah, to me, I know that I'm in another world, and therefore I am really figuring out what to do. You know, what am I gonna, what art am I going to be making, right? Which probably would be video and film, the same thing. I'm not just saying that I want to stop that, but yeah, I'm going through a lot of thinking that I like to do, because it has the same process that when I am doing video, you know, set that is not I'm not producing anything, which I don't care either, because it is all part of, you know, that's what I was saying about cooking. These other stuff, they're solid part of that artistic scene. The same thinking, you know, it's part of that artistic process that is not producing the videos, but it's producing a lot of interesting possibilities in terms of thinking and putting thoughts together.
Yeah, it's interesting. You talked about film as like reality removed from reality, but not reality. It's like the virus has sort of created this, like, it's like we're living in a movie version of the life that we all lived a year ago.
Yes.
You know, where it's real, but it's not the same. It doesn't feel as tangible. And now, because we're living so much more, because we embody ourselves virtually so much more now than we did previously, you know, and that's across multiple generations. Now we're all sort of embodied within the virtual. It's like a triple consciousness, almost like going back to the Fanon thing, the idea of like, now there's abstractions upon abstractions, and so you know, all of the perceptions that we have towards our bodies that occur through these mediums of technology and this interface called the internet. You know, it's like now we have to fight multiple abstractions of our own embodiment. Now the perceptions of us are so much more complicated now.
Yeah, no, very, 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 very accurate what you're saying, you know, and I'm glad that you brought the issue of double consciousness, because or multiple consciousness, you know, or triple consciousness, because that is something that is becoming very clear, you know, and also the one of the issues that I mean, the thought, the phrase double consciousness, I think that it comes out of Dubois, a black poet, you know, French poet in the 50s, and he talks about double consciousness because Fanon wrote a book that says black what is it, black mask, white face, or something like that.
Black skin, white mask.
Black skin, white mask. That is the double consciousness, right? That you when you're colonized or when you are assimilated to culture, you deal with that, and that's and I think that I have expanded double consciousness to think it more in terms of multiple installations. You know, I try to think of double consciousness in that way, and in my work too. But I think that is more than double consciousness. I think that is in that consciousness work at many levels, racially, colonially, you know, but also in the way that you were explaining, it's very accurate. This moment that we are having, you know, and we have so like triple consciousness of living in three different worlds, or four or five at the same time, which what Jessica was talking about, entanglement, this entanglement, of consciousness in some ways as well,
Yeah, and I think we also have different existences. Like even pre-COVID, in my case, it's like since I moved here to Canada, it seems that I don't exist anymore in Mexico. Like
Yeah.
I exist here, but I don't exist unless I'm constantly posting my work on Facebook. Then I exist. So yeah, it's yeah, in your work X-ray, that is also part of the videos that we're showing at the factory, you kind of like question who lives and who dies, but also who exists and who doesn't exist. And basically right now, the person that doesn't have internet, they don't exist really. So yeah, it's gonna be like a time in which a few years in which we can go back and just think about what's happening right now and how that is really affecting us. And I'm a media artist, and you also work with video, which is a digital media, and it's the same case with John. But I think that in a sense we are privileged because we already work with the internet, we already work with computers in different ways. But what happened to other people that they don't have access, right? They don't have the same opportunities, or even the people that they don't belong to this kind of like our world. Like what's happened with other, like I always question myself, like I immigrate here as an artist and a student, but what happened with other people that doesn't migrate that way? What's their existence, or what's their value? Because that's so like the society is always like telling us what our value is. So so it's very complex, and I think we have to rescue what you say about and I also mentioned about entanglement. Like our existence is just going through different spaces, different just distortions of reality too. And how can we kind of like acknowledge like all of them? And I just want to say one thing, because it's very interesting being here in Canada and having the acknowledge of the indigenous communities' lands, but then we also in Zoom, so and we also using YouTube, so and the servers go through like a lot of places in the world, like so we should also acknowledge those the indigenous communities of those places of Peru. I know that like there are servers in India, so how can we like acknowledge that?
Well, how do we acknowledge? For instance, my idea of America is the whole continent, right? So, and it's a continent that is united. It's not separated by anything. I mean, not even by what they have been able to. But so when I talk about in the American, what I say Afro-Americans, I'm referring to Afro-Americans in the whole continent. When I refer to indigenous population, I refer to the whole continent, right? That has been connected at least in the same for the same continent. So understanding who we are is very important, and unfortunately in Canada, for some reasons, colonialism in Canada cut off Canada from the Canada doesn't even think that it's in America. It's Canada, some chunk of really lots of land that is not, that exists only, and doesn't know very much about the South, more concerned with the neighbors. So we are in a very unique situation here in this country because of that. The unity, even in some ways, there has been a disconnection with the indigenous people, right, from the north and the south. Has been a disconnection that has been growing on and more and more and more. And they will grow more because they are all there's the same struggle, and all the indigenous communities are becoming stronger and stronger and stronger with many more intelligent alternatives of organization that are not the communities and another political groups or social groups. So it is interesting. I mean, look at the Zapatistas, right? The Zapatistas, I think that they just started a trip by boat to Spain, right? The trip back, right? The reverse back, and that's our metaphorical, very strong ideas, of visibilization of without killing the other, right? And a process of education of the other. The other that has discriminated, you have to be as well be educated. You cannot kill them, right? Because then you will be doing the same thing that they do. So we are in that situation that we had to reinvent strategies that strategies of care, not only for ourselves but for the others, even the others who hate us. We cannot afford to become like them. So that's why that demands new politics and new forms of rebellion and new forms of emancipation, new forms of doing arts as well, right? And new forms of creating political, cultural spaces as well, and trying, that's.
Yeah, when I think about building and creation, I think about the concept of territories and borders. I think about I'm myself as a Haudenosaunee person, and the different treaties that have been built over the centuries between other indigenous nations and non-indigenous people. And I think about how the framework of things like the two-row wampum belt or the dish with one spoon, these are not just like buzzwords. These aren't just old treaties that are just sitting around and not doing anything. These are ways of thinking and ways of being. And I think a lot about how the wampum belt that represents the Haudenosaunee people is the Hiawatha Belt, which you may have seen. It's purple and it's got 4 boxes and a tree in the middle, and it has these bars that extend to the end of the wampum belt. And the reason why they extend to the very edge of the wampum belt is because the perception and the understanding was that there would be other nations, not just indigenous nations, but there would be other nations who would come to the Haudenosaunee people and who would want to make agreements with us and who would want to be welcome to us. And so the doors never closed. The Mohawk people are called the keepers of the Western door. And so that's because they were the most Western nation, territorially speaking, in the traditional territory of the Haudenosaunee. And so when they would be approached by other nations, whether they be Dutch, English, and eventually, the Tuscarora joined the Six Nations, and that's why we're now known as the Six Nations now. And so having this framework from antiquity, this idea, this understanding that you will have to be the ones to open up that door and to reach out and to be the ones who to create solidarity between other nations. And a nation doesn't have to be just a political organization. It could be a group of people, could be anybody out there who wants and who needs solidarity. The fundamental structure of Haudenosaunee culture and life that I take with me in my art is that, we are stronger together than we are separate. And that being represented by the arrows, so you could snap an arrow very easily, a single arrow very easily, but if you bundle 5 of them together, it's impossible. And so this idea that we are stronger together is it's so relevant to this day, to this occasion, and to us every day, really, as artists. It is our job to be able to create space, not just physically, not just virtually, but epistemologically as well. There is room in the future for everyone.
Yes, and that's why I was saying that when we were talking about it before about the past, I say that past is present. You know, that past is present. It's not so past. It's present, and that's it's not. You know, indigenous formal knowledge are present. They're not past. They're still. You know, and that thing that you're talking about, the keepers of the doors, or this concept of having doors right open, is very much the contrary of Western, what we call Western thought, right? Which is the keepers of walls. You know, so no one can pass. You know what I mean? So it's a whole different formal knowledge. You know, and that formal knowledge of the wall making is the one that has been ruled us for more than 500 years, right? And that's what had created the catastrophe that we have right now, because that concept is racist, and modernity and the Western reason is very much tied up to a form of a violent form of controlling another people and selling them, in case of the African slaves and indigenous slaves, and destroying them and minimizing their humanity to become non-human, right? And it has rule, it has rule, it still is, because it was built on that, and those are the rules, and you can see them right now in Europe. It's the wall, the enclosures, the village vigilance, the letting them die in the ocean, all that kind of stuff. It's a continuation of all that hasn't stopped. So therefore, if anything could be the past, it would be great that would be the past. And the samples that you're talking about, the philosophy, the formal knowledge, that is the present. You know what I mean? That makes more sense at this point. So, or those two presents, I prefer the open doors. Yeah.
All right, Jessica, do you want to set us up for the next segment?
Yeah, so there's like time for questions and answers. So if you have any questions, you can post that on YouTube and we can read it to Jorge. Okay, so Christina is posing a question. Jorge, can you expand a bit on what you see as the role of the artist and art in everyday life? And if art is so much a fabric of who you are, as you mentioned at the beginning.
Yeah. No. Well, the role of the artist is not only creating art, right? You know what I mean? Is cooking, doing all the stuff that I was talking about. That is also creative and constructive, and it has a lot of aesthetic value as well. But there is another thing that we have, which is through doing what we do, we accumulate certain knowledge, technical knowledge, or conceptual knowledge, or philosophical knowledge, all that kind of stuff that you can help to, that you can bring to another people as well. So one of those expansions of me being an artist is doing facilitating workshops with youth, mostly with youth here in Canada, from not only Latin community, but lots of workshops with the Latin youth community, mostly working with Latin youth who have been in and out of prison, and they have been in and out of prison because they are standing up in a corner. The police gets them because they think that they are, because if you find, there was laws in here that if you are 4 or 5 in a corner, then you are a gang, and then they will take you, they will bring you to jail. And for other reasons, they had to survive, so they probably sell drugs or this or that. I mean, look at how many of those kids, they went to prison because they were selling marijuana, right? Now it's legal. So can you imagine? I mean, they should be compensated for all what they lost, you know what I mean? Because they were wrong. They were wrong putting these people in prison because they were selling marijuana. They should have detected a long time ago that marijuana was like it is right now, right? So anyway, but so that that need that I have, and lots of us have, because I'm not the only one. Artists, there's a need to go into another communities and transmit knowledge, and it's not only transmit knowledge, but it's to learn from all those communities, because they do have incredible knowledge. And you know, those communities, you go there and you come out a different person, because there's so much information. And these are kids who have, when we talk about self-creation in some ways, you know, they have to be very smart to be able to do what they do without dying or being captured with the police. And sometimes they get captured by the police as well, right? So and to survive in those prisons and all that. I mean, it is an incredible experience that we perhaps don't value, but there is a lot of artistry too in all those people. And one of the things that I find is that when we get there, when we start doing the workshops, they already, the ones who come, the ones who want to be part, is because they really want to make films or videos, and they already have ideas in their heads. They just never had the resources, and probably, you know, what we do is like open those doors, you know, and they just do amazing works. And that had happened in here in Toronto. We've done it in Colombia. Alexandra has done it in Panama, in Peru, in Brazil, different parts, right? Different countries. So that's another thing about expanding what you do, right? Living that everyday life and sharing things that you know to people who may benefit from it, and they don't have the chance to. So yeah, that is the other role that an artist have is you know, create communities, as I'm saying, you know, create communities not only within the subaltern communities or under you know, discriminated communities, but also within our artistic communities, right? Create situations like what you're doing right now, and thanks for inviting me, you know, Christina, you know, and you guys. You know, that this is great. You know, I feel really honored to talk to you.
I think a lot about and yeah, thank you for joining us and for sharing your wisdom. You know, last year I had the distinct pleasure of meeting Deanna Bowen, who also won a 2020 Governor General's Award. And Deanna, a large part of like our relationship is that we both agree that when you're a poor artist, you just can't afford to make mistakes. And so when an older artist or an experienced artist, maybe someone who has a lifetime worth of achievement, when they impart their knowledge and they impart their that encouragement, that's the most beautiful thing and the most important thing, really. It's that when you go into these communities and you say, you can do this thing, you have the power in you already. It's just that you need a camera, you need a little bit of resources, you need a little bit of direction or encouragement, then that's what you get. And, you know, when you go into those communities and you do that, you're creating the next generation of artists.
Yeah, because the idea, for instance, for us, and I'm talking, when I say us, is because it's some people that I work with, and you know, and Alexandra, my partner, she does a lot of those facilitations. In fact, she's been doing more lately than I have. But is that you don't only just go to communities, and this is to answer Michael Diricius, that is asking a bit more about my approach to collaboration. When you go to those communities, you don't go as a teacher, or psychologist. So you go as a colleague, and you go to collaborate, because you just know a few more little things about, you know, because you've been doing it longer, but they have a lot of knowledge, and then what they do in the workshops and what we do in the workshops becomes a collaboration in some ways, you know, that we collaborate with them so they produce what they produce, and they collaborate with us in probably sharing a lot of this stuff. But also there's collaboration with works with another artist, and I have done that, obviously, you know. And one of the things that I love to do, that I don't do that much, is collaboration. Actually, our collaboration, because it's really hard here in Canada. to do it, because you had to have money. You just can't. I mean, I collaborate with Alexandra because we live together, and the ways of collaboration had different levels. I collaborate with in her work, doing things for her or talking about what she's doing. She does the same thing with me. We also collaborate in works that we do together when the work is more mine than her or more hers than mine. And we also collaborate in works that they're both works, right? The work is from both of us. So there's different levels of collaboration. The Conversalón that I'm talking is a collective. It's 6 of us. And the idea of the collective is a collective that has 6 heads, no 1 head, right? So and that is a concept of collective that I find more important, because that is collaboration. It's not just working all in following one path, because in this collective that I'm talking about, you as member of the collective can do something on your own, and you don't have to ask the collective if you can do it or not, because we are a collective and we know what you can do and what you cannot do is fine. You know what I mean? Or you can ask me to collaborate in a project, and we were doing. Not all the 4 of them had to be there. So it's a collective that works by initiatives, and all initiatives are welcome, right? In whatever combination you want. And so to avoid all those meetings about collectives, about going in one direction. So that's why I say a collective with many heads, instead of a sect. And so collaboration is very important. I would love to. I'm working in a film right now that is very collaborative too, and so it's lots of people, and we had to collaborate to bring that thing. So collaboration is important. Collaboration not only working in art, but collaboration in everything. As far as I'm concerned, yeah, it's very important to collaborate.
Yeah, and I'm sorry. Yeah, I was hearing like one of your interviews that you say that when you do workshop, you also collaborate with people. And I think that, yeah, that's great. Mostly because like as an artist, if you go and do a workshop, as you say, you have to kind of like understand that you're exchanging knowledge. Because if not, then it becomes kind of like a new colonization in which you are the expert and the others, they don't know anything. But I wanted to talk about if you can expand a little bit more on collaboration. What's kind of like what you do when you're collaborating? Did you just focus on, for example, doing your part, or is there like how is this change with other people?
Oh no, it's at all levels, because well, I just finished doing a workshop with queer African refugees, and there was in that group there was a woman from Mexico and another person from Saudi Arabia, but the rest were from Tanzania or other countries online, and it was really difficult. It was really difficult because, to answer your question, when we do the workshops that are presential, that that the people are there, you develop relationships with every person, right? And in developing that relationships, you detect certain attributes that everyone has as they detect whatever attributes I have, right? So then, for instance, there's once in these workshops, this woman came and she was very good at talking, and she spoke really fast and almost with rhymes, and then when the time came for her to talk about her work, because they do present her ideas, and then the whole group will talk about her even before, and we actually try to tell them to be very critical with arguments, right? So not to say nice to everything. So then we knew that she was very good. So almost between all of us, we told her, why don't you do something with a spoken word? That you're very good at doing the spoken word anyway. You do it. And then she wrote something and read it faster, more like a spoken word, and it was an incredible. And she did an incredible piece. an incredible work that I shown a lot in different countries. And she ended up studying at Ryerson. That work helped her to get into Ryerson, and that happened with other members of the workshops. But one of the philosophies that we have is that when we go to communities to do workshops, is so they can do it on themselves, as you were saying, by themselves, but also that they will replace us, right? That they can do it with their own communities and create people who replace them, because that's one of the problems in terms of pedagogic, right? And that's one of the problems of universities too, that all that knowledge has been standardized knowledge, because there's all these teachers have been there for 10 years, 12 years, and they're only just making a salary and repeating the thing that they've been repeating for years and years and years. So they are teaching people to repeat, you know. So I think that the role of somebody who has some kind of a transmission of knowledge, and you are passing knowledge for people to do things, is that they will eventually tell you, thank you very much, we can do it, and we're going to continue doing it, because they also, they are in their communities. I in some ways I am from outside as well. So that's those kind of connections is very important. How much do you belong? Because it's situated knowledge too, right? I mean, they know better that I will do as much as I try. So another thing that we do is continuity. You know, that to not just to do one thing, just to go through the revolving door, you know, that a lot of people do with communities. They go through here and they come out and they look at another community and they go here. No, we keep in contact, we work, try to do a second and third workshop if we can. It's hard because sometimes when we don't get the money, we do it for free. And in Colombia, for instance, the equipments that we have in here for the workshops, when they get obsolete and we get new ones, we bring them to Colombia and get them to leave them in Colombia with them, right? And some of them have made a living, actually survive with those cameras that we get and study and work and all that stuff. And so it's all kinds of relations that you have to be concerned with, and we keep in contact with them. They still call me. You know, I still contact her. Alexandra is a lot better than that. I mean, we worked with Venezuelan woman 2 years ago that they crossed from Venezuela to Colombia walking, and they end up in the streets just selling little candies and living in the most incredible misery and being discriminated. And so we work with them, and we still have contact with all of them. Alexandra writes in constantly, and we went to Peru and met one of them at Peru, you know, but we try to, the same thing in Colombia. When I go, I go and do 2 or 3 day workshop for free, you know, just to keep up, to teach them something new that I have about editing or something. I just tell them, look, this is a new technique, you know, but that's it. But in terms of philosophically, it's a collaboration of exchange of knowledge. What there is a am I reading the questions myself, or you are doing it? Because there is a question in here by Luis Navarro.
Yeah, I can read it. So what are your thoughts in terms of the model of the gallery here in Canada? How you feel that is different or similar to how people do exhibitions in Latin America? It's hard to answer that, but the model gallery in Canada, to me, it's always been in a crisis. You know, because the gallery models in Canada are, especially the biggest galleries, are very much corporate oriented and profit oriented, and so the works become more that products, more that provoking discussions and challenges. You know, so the artists are already, when they enter the spaces, they are sacred. And the viewer just receives the information like they were in an altar, you know, like the great intelligence of this artist. So you don't have any contact with the work, you know, and it's all packaged. So I mean, it's fine. It's fine. That's an option. There is another options, right? And like the one that we do in Conversaloni here is much more interesting, I find, you know, because by the time that after having a meal, 40 people in here with the artist that is going to talk,
by the time that the artists talk, everyone already has spoken to the artist. And when they come and start talking, they ask questions that are really significant. And then by the time the artist and the viewers, they have in a meeting, they have met and talked very smart things provoked by the artist and the viewer's intelligence as well. So they are at a more equal level. Hierarchies, they break down. So that's one of the things that I find difficult with galleries in all models. A lot of the organizations that we have, independent organizations, also unfortunately they have modeled themselves to corporations in some way, small corporations that don't even try to be corporations, but they cannot be. So and they're very strict, and they have forgotten about openness, and I think that has caused an exodus of community and somehow, so it would be really nice to see them. Now it's impossible, right? But to thinking about community and what community is, and that's the keepers of the doors. That's what they should be. The keepers of the door, the artworks, the art doors. So art, because they used to be like that. They were founded on that. A Space, all those galleries were founded on lots of young people going there and opening the doors for all the other young people, and just energy, and then we become a structure. That's why I think it has to revise at least every 5 years. So, the policies of the organizations, and to bring new ideas into it. And in Colombia, there's the same similar things, or in Latin America, there's the same things, because organizations are, it's only that the artworks in or how artists work in Latin America is very different than in here, right? There is no financing, there is no help. There is another ways that the artists find ways to do it. There is many, for instance, it's not that difficult in Latin America to have an exhibition, because, for instance, in Bogota, you go to Bogota and you want to have an exhibition of film and video. In Mexico too, there's a lot of cultural spaces that they have projection rooms, and really neat projection rooms with really good sound, and they're very open to let you use it. It's not like in here it's really expensive. Here in Toronto, it's impossible to have a festival right now, because if you're a community that you don't get funding from the government, and you want to create a festival and get a theater, forget it. It's almost impossible. In Colombia, in Latin America, there's possibilities. And also, there's more, artists are more politically aware because of the crisis. It's almost impossible to escape that political awareness in those countries, because they are politically charged places constantly, right? So you are in that ambience and that social ground that is almost impossible to escape. But at the end, there is the same thing. Younger people organize alternative spaces to create options.
And kind of like in the same line, I just want to know your thoughts about labor and art, because basically also like the difference between my experience in Mexico is that it's very like difficult to get paid as an artist, because the gallery is not part of the economical model of the country. But here the gallery is part of the economical model. So then you have at least you can live by being an artist. It's more difficult, but it's also like possible. So I don't know what your thoughts about.
Well, there's two levels on that, right? I mean, it's artists working with labor, or artists being considered a labor, and artists getting a salary for the work that they do, because the perception that communities or people have is that artists don't work, right? And it's totally false. And I mean, I think that I work more than if I was in a factory, to tell you the truth, because I'm working almost 24 hours a day. But also, a lot of the work that we do produces, we consume things when we buy hard drives, we buy these cameras and this and that, develop this, so we are really active participants on moving that economy, of that. So we are not parasites, you know what I mean? They just get it. And even when you get the Canada Council grants, which I think that or the Ontario's Council, I think that it's great that we have that system. It has its problems, obviously, but I think that is great, because even when you get one of those grants, I mean, you just, I remember making a film once and sitting and paying. It was $20,000 film, so I just sat there and paid, wrote checks and paid everyone at the end. And when I went to the last person, I was left with nothing myself. And that's that's actually when I decided not to make films anymore, films, because I was 16, because it was, I said, oh no, this is not a good business, right? But we spend money, we pay people money, we buy things, so it's an economy. In some way, there is an economy there going on, So now the relationship with labor it's always been at different levels. I mean, there is a solidarity with labor issues, and in the encounter of labor solidarity with political issues, where we also are in solidarity with, and we sometimes artists in labor meet supporting, let's say, the struggle of people in El Salvador, the struggle of people in, indigenous people in here, there's meetings, so that there's connections, and also the support that artists give to labor, and there's artists who work with labor closer that I do, for instance, right? But also there's another labor that I'm very concerned, and it's the non-unionized labor, right? Which is the one that I've been more part of it, and because I spent all my life working in shitty jobs, for many, many, many years when I came in here, and then what happened? I was exploited in some ways as well, because I was getting the minimum wage, and sometimes they didn't even pay me, but at the same time, now that I'm older, I don't appear as if I worked, right? Because a lot of those jobs weren't registered, this or that, and or I was earning too little, and I never had there was never a union, that I could go, because we were to get into union is also difficult, right? You had to have certain skills to be part of the union, etc. And there's lots of people working out there that are almost once more invisible, right? To the unions, or invisible to that system that can protect them. And then there's the work of the illegals, right? The illegals who are totally exploited, and they don't register. They pay taxes, and a lot of the times illegal use another names, or they buy those social insurance numbers or something like that. So they pay taxes on that number, and they never get anything back. So the system is like that. It's complicated, but I value the work that some artists do with labor, and not some who are very specific kind of that work. I think that it's great that they do it, and I respect it a lot. And I was going to say something else, but I forgot about labor. Yeah, no, I forgot. If I remember, I will say. But it's important. It is important, that connection, and this is a connection to labor in some ways, which is great, that I'm connected to that, and I hope that some of the workers see the work.
Yeah, there's something about working as an artist. A lot of the times the grant system, the little bit of money that we all sort of fight each other over, it kind of seems like the paternalistic relationship of the teacher. So going back to the idea of like the workshops and how you approach them as a collaborator, as a colleague, just somebody with a little bit more knowledge, a little bit more experience. There's something, I think the artist is in a unique position because they can do their work, and they can build a whole new way of organizing. Like the collective as an organizational, group is so inspirational to me. And I think that it sort of puts hope in my heart that unity and solidarity across all forms of labor, whether they be in the arts or in whether they be essential workers, that there is this kind of understanding and unity across all these different disciplines, because really we all deserve dignity, and we all deserve to labor is entitled to all that it creates. It's just that artists are just those workers who happen to benefit the most at the current state, but they set the model. We can, as artists, can set the model for how all workers are treated in a more fair and just future.
Yeah.
Yeah, but I think that's all of the questions that we have for from the audience. But I want to say personally that this has been a fantastic opportunity. Thank you for sharing your time with us. Thank you for imparting your wisdom and your insights. I do hope that workers all over the world will see your work and who will enjoy it, because I think you have that in all of your work that I've seen. You have the spirit of honesty, you have the spirit of true, you have like a very kind spirit in all of your work, even if it's stuff that's very honest and sincere and maybe even traumatic. It's honest, and I think that a lot of people who will see your work will see that as well.
Thank you.
Yeah, same. Thank you very much, Jorge, for accepting our invitation. It was a nice talk.
Thank you for inviting me, and thanks to you guys in the factory. I mean, it's great. I totally support what you guys do. And when I question the organizations, I'm not really being destructive in my criticism. It's more a call to reinvent things, as much as we can, because that's the function of art, right? To reinvent things, and all the art spaces had to reinvent also that stuff, live up with and bring back the energy, the original energy in some ways. And I think that I wish you the best in your endeavors in the future, and I will gonna keep you in my radar to see more of the stuff that you guys do. And I think that is great. That I feel really honored actually that you invited me, and came as a surprise, and it was a very nice surprise, and I'm really happy to have talked to you. I learned a lot today, actually. Lots from you guys. Thank you.
Thank you, Jorge.
Sorry, I wanted to say that Jorge's work is very touches the immigration subject a lot. So yeah, our energies to all the immigrant, illegal and legal people living here in Canada and working here.
And remember that nobody is illegal on stolen land.
Yeah, right. Very good. Thank you.
Definitely.
In fact, no one is illegal.
For sure. Yeah, Nyawa, Jorge.
We have a lot of thank yous in the chat from all of our watchers. And I want to give a big thank you as well, Jorge. I felt like I could listen to you three talk forever. You have such good energy together.
Yeah, it was really nice. It was really fun.
It was, and it was very enlightening, and it was very welcoming as well. I felt like you three should talk more. maybe not publicly, but you all have this mutual understanding, and I'm so happy that we were able to connect all of you and show our community like such good media art talent here tonight. I want to really, before we close the call, I want to invite everybody watching here to visit Jorge Lozano's website, as well as the Factory Media Center show, because Jorge is a prolific artist. We could only show 5 films, but if you visit his website, you can see hundreds. I hope I'm not exaggerating, but
no, you're not.
we had a really fun time watching them all and picking a selection to to screen. So they're screening online on, 5 of them are screening online on Factory Media Center's website, as well as in our window from 6 to 10 p.m. It's starting yesterday, but for now, Saturday, Sunday, Monday, and it's meant to be dark out. It's meant to be a rainy weekend, so you'll be able to see them from 6 to 10 if you're interested. But again, Jorge is a prolific artist, an amazing artist. Check out his work in collaboration with Alexandra, and I think that's it for us tonight. I have a question actually before I come off the call. YouTube is actually not letting us put any links in the chat, but we will update the description for the live stream and paste the links to Factory Media Center screening and Jorge's films as well, so that you can revisit this page and all the information will be here. Patricio, thank you for asking. That's it from us.
Well, thank you.
Thank you. And thank you to our partners at the Workers' Arts and Heritage Center for collaborating on this with us. It's really important that we were able to do this program in celebration of International Workers' Day. And we're so honored to have them as a partner and to have Jorge screening with us here tonight.
Yeah, I just wanted to echo Christina and say thank you so much, Jorge, Jessica, and John. The conversation was amazing. I loved listening to you as well. And I think it was just such an appropriate and timely conversation for things going on in the world today, for International Workers' Day, for our experiences. So thank you on behalf of WAC, and we're thrilled to partner with Factory Media Center as well. Have a great night, everybody.
Thank you. Good night.
Nyawa and Onagawahi.
And Jessica and John, keep in touch.
I will.
You, Christina. Keep in touch, okay? Let me know what I like to see what you guys do. So send me links, please.
Absolutely.
I've seen Christina's work and I really like it. So
Thank you.
Once the COVID restrictions are done, we can go to the conversaton.
yeah, when you will be guest of honor for the Conversalon when if we manage to do one. All right. So keep in touch. Goodbye.
Absolutely.
Thank you for everything. Thank you for all the knowledge that you guys have. Really. Okay. Bye.
Absolutely. Ona.
Goodbye.